What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined by all of you on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check me out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, find all of my written work at si.com/NFL/Steelers, including last night's pick of Oregon defensive tackle Derrick Harmon. 21 is in. The Pittsburgh Steelers have their new rookie, their new first-round pick. We're diving into our thoughts, or my thoughts, on the pick, answering all your guys' questions about the pick. What is next? Did the Pittsburgh Steelers have quarterback in mind at all? Where do they go from here? Do they find a quarterback? Is a trade coming? So much is happening with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the NFL draft right now, and it seems to just be getting started. After weeks of conversation, debate, is it going to be a quarterback? Jackson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, Aaron Rodgers talk, Kirk Cousins trades, the whole nine. We have hit a place where the Pittsburgh Steelers have held true to the one thing that I think was reiterated time and time and time again, that they want a defensive tackle, that they are looking for youth along their defensive line, that they wanted another big man to replace Larry Ogunjobi, to grow with Keanu Benton, to eventually replace Cam Hayward, and for right now to be a stud in the middle to help their ground game, their pass defense, and everything in between. The Pittsburgh Steelers get Derrick Harmon in a move where they sat, they waited, and in the words of Mike Tomlin, they got a guy who has Steelers DNA. We're going to dive into Derrick Harmon. We're going to dive into what the Steelers should expect from him, if he can make an instant impact, where he could play along the defensive line, obviously, and then what's to come. We head into day two. Shedeur Sanders is still on the board. Jalen Milroe is still on the board. Only two quarterbacks go in the first round last night after the over-under was 3.5, and everybody's talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to get Shedeur at 21. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to get Shedeur at 21. Well, yesterday, I sat here and said the Pittsburgh Steelers want a defensive tackle, and that defensive tackle is probably either Kenneth Grant or Derrick Harmon. Those are the two names that the Steelers want to have on the board for 21, and they got one of them. That is Derrick Harmon. That's where we'll start here. The Pittsburgh Steelers have landed a player that instantly becomes a starter on their defensive line, whose upside is Cam Hayward 2.0, which, if you know me, you know that I think Cam Hayward is a Canton, Ohio Hall of Fame candidate one day. I'm not positive he gets in there, but I think he should be considered, and heavily considered, by the time this is all done. Cam Hayward is a dude who solves all your issues on the defensive line, and if you have another one, well, you seem to solve more issues. I think Derrick Harmon right now fits the Steelers perfectly. He could come in here. I think the only downside is Keanu Benton remains the nose tackle for another season, but I'm okay with Derrick Harmon playing that end position. I'm okay with him playing a 3-tech and standing one out from the nose guard and just being, again, another Cam Hayward. I think that fits very well. I think you could get a little bit of Stephon Tuitt with Derrick Harmon, and that's what the Pittsburgh Steelers have been missing since Stephon Tuitt left for early retirement. Anybody who wanted to see the Steelers improve their defense, their run defense that struggled mightily last year, and their pass defense, who everybody is concerned about TJ Watt. If TJ Watt isn't playing well, can the Steelers still win? Are they still as dominant? Is their defense still as good? Well, you just got a guy who last year finished first amongst the entire FBS in pressures at the defensive tackle position. He led that pressure rate, or those pressures, by 12. Number two had 12 less pressures than Derrick Harmon. You're getting a guy that plays both run and pass instantly. Kenneth Grant came with question marks about the pass defense right off the bat. I think Kenneth Grant was a phenomenal pick for the Miami Dolphins. Didn't see it coming, but I still think he's a great player. Derrick Harmon right now is a complete guy who could come in here and make an impact on 3 downs for an entire game. That is what the Pittsburgh Steelers got right off the bat. Now, what they do with him, I imagine he starts where Larry Ogunjobi started last year. That's where I think Derrick Harmon fits best right now, is to have him in the 3-tech, playing defensive end, filling that role as a run stuffer / pass rusher and going from there. That's what I see in Derrick Harmon. I imagine Keanu Benton stays with the nose tackle position for right now, but Cam Hayward is hitting a point where at some point you got to slow down a little bit. At some point, people have to look at it and go, Cam can't do this forever, right? He can't sit here and play every single down in a game forever, right? If that's the case in 2025, Derrick Harmon, Keanu Benton allow you to transition that, to take a step over, to have packages where Keanu Benton and Derrick Harmon or your defensive tackles, and you don't have a nose out there on the field. I think that works so well for the Pittsburgh Steelers, to be able to have younger options replace Cam that are still dominant, that are still great options to have along your defensive front. And for anybody sitting here going, how do you score points? I don't know, but if a team can't score against you, it's a massive upgrade and a situation where you are most likely going to walk out of there with at least a shot to win a football game if your defense can stay stout. I love Derrick Harmon. I love the pick of Derrick Harmon. I look at this as a guy that fits in exactly what the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking to do. He's Cam Hayward 2.0. He's got Steelers DNA, according to Mike Tomlin. He's the best pass rushing defensive tackle in college football. He's got great run defense. There are no boxes that are not checked. None. And if you haven't read about the story of his mother and everything going on there and how he's got that oomph from that, I mean, look, and I'm a sucker for a dude who's got a great backstory, who has that extra motivation, who kind of gives you that, yeah, this dude's fighting for something way bigger, playing with purpose. And that's who Derrick Harmon is. And I, to be honest, I liked the Derrick Harmon pick before it happened. I liked the Derrick Harmon pick way more after speaking to him and understanding that this dude has been through hell. He's been beat and bruised and still continues to be beat and bruised. And draft night probably wasn't as enjoyable for him as many others. But he's a dude that's going to fight his ass off. And that's awesome. Like, that's a guy that you could get behind. That's a guy that you could root for. That's a guy that in a blue-collar city on a blue-collar football team is what you're looking for. That's what you're looking for. I think Derrick Harmon's the perfect pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know it's not the big flashy one that everybody wanted. I know it's not a quarterback. I know there are questions that come with where do you go now? There is no quarterback, but I'm telling you right now, Derrick Harmon's going to make an impact in Pittsburgh right off the bat. He's going to make this defense better right off the bat. And I'm not one of those guys that says defensive tackle was so deep that you had to wait and it was okay to wait. No. If there's a guy that you believe is a 10 to 12 year starter with all pro upside, and that's what Cam Hayward is, and this is Cam Hayward 2.0, you go get an all pro. You can't have enough all pros on a football team. You can't. That's just the NFL. You want to be great? Go get the best players. Derrick Harmon is one of those guys that I think fits perfectly in Pittsburgh and what he can do, and I am all about what Derrick Harmon brings to the city of Pittsburgh. This is football, man, and this is Pittsburgh Steelers football, and you want to know how they play, and you want to know how they're going to always play? Win on defense. And right now, everybody can say whatever they want about, well, you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a quarterback. We're going to dive into it in a second. But the rest of the league also didn't trust the quarterbacks. Also didn't sit here and say Shedeur Sanders is a first-round pick. That tells you everything you need to know about if the Pittsburgh Steelers should have reached on a guy that many didn't view as a first-round selection. And first-round quarterbacks mean that you are a starter. Second-round quarterbacks mean that you are a risk. That's where the Pittsburgh Steelers stand currently. Let's talk about what's next. Let's talk about quarterbacks. I think they're both massive conversations to have. As we sit here today, the Pittsburgh Steelers starting quarterback is Mason Rudolph. And that's not changing as of this morning, probably right up until the second round of the NFL draft. There were two reports that came out yesterday that were pretty big that surround the Pittsburgh Steelers and what they do next in the NFL draft. The first one was that the Pittsburgh Steelers are interested in trading up, that they could look to trade up on day 2 for a quarterback. Okay, great. We'll dive into that here momentarily. The second one is from Josina Anderson, saying that the Pittsburgh Steelers had a deadline for Aaron Rodgers. That deadline was 2 days before the NFL draft, that they wanted 48 hours notice on Aaron Rodgers' decision. They never got it. They didn't get an answer from Aaron Rodgers. They're not going to get an answer from Aaron Rodgers. I spoke to somebody yesterday before the NFL draft, like right before the NFL draft, and the word I got was that the Steelers fully know what's going on with Aaron Rodgers and that they've had the conversations that they need to have, and they are still confident that Aaron Rodgers is going to end up in Pittsburgh. I didn't hear anything about a deadline, but let's say that there is one. Let's say that there is a deadline between the Pittsburgh Steelers and Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers surpassed it. Well, it only makes your need for a quarterback higher, but your situation just about the same. You sit here and say, Mason Rudolph is our starting quarterback. That's not great. But if our options are to reach on a guy in the first round or draft a good defense and say Mason Rudolph needs to be our guy, then, well, I think in my opinion, I would have went with exactly what the Pittsburgh Steelers did. Now, when it comes to trading up in day 2, I think that's the bigger question mark here, because there are a number of positions the Steelers still want to look at. They want to look at wide receiver. They want to look at running back. They possibly want an offensive lineman. They want a defensive back. And then they want a quarterback. And when it comes to a trade up on day 2, maybe, just maybe, they move up for a quarterback into the end of round 2. But I do not imagine it's any higher than that. The Steelers are not going to sell house for a quarterback. They are not going to sell house for a second-round quarterback. Nobody sells house for a second-round quarterback. That is not what you do. In the first round, you get an added year. If that is your franchise quarterback, you don't mess around and you go and get him. That is the rule of the NFL. That has always been the rule of the NFL. But in the second round, in the third round, you are looking at guys that in another position are a second-round grade. At quarterback, most likely that quarterback has a first-round quarterback grade, or I put the quotations in the wrong spot, but a first-round quarterback grade, but a normal overall second or third or maybe even a fourth-round grade in the NFL draft. You're not selling house for a guy you only get for 4 years before you have to decide on extending him. If you get that extra year, you trade back into the first round. But the Steelers aren't trading with the Cleveland Browns to go get Shedeur Sanders. I have such a hard time believing that would ever happen. I don't think they'd trade up into the early portions of the second round. Now, I do think the George Pickens trade is very interesting and one that we could continue to talk about, but I do not think the Steelers are going to trade George Pickens for a quarterback. I don't. I think if the Steelers were to trade George Pickens, they'd walk away with Trey Henderson. They would walk away with Jaden Higgins. They would walk away with, I thought it was going to be Matthew Golden until Matthew Golden came off the board. I looked at everybody and said, okay, if the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to make a trade, the board is shaking out so that they can get an early second-round wide receiver that should have went first. In Golden. But now he's off the board. The only way I think the Steelers move up in the NFL draft over the next 24 hours is by doing so late in the second to go get a quarterback. I don't think they trade George Pickens for a quarterback. I think if they traded George, it would be an early second-round pick. But where we stand today, I don't know if that wide receiver is out there to go get. I think Jaden Higgins is an interesting name. I think Noel out of Iowa State is an interesting name. I think Trey Harris is an interesting name. But the Steelers don't have a ton of interest in any of these guys. They'd probably be very comfortable with George Pickens, where we stand right now. I don't look at them and say Jalen Milroe is going to be the guy that they're going to get. If Jalen Milroe's there at 83, sure, there's a conversation to be had. but they're not trading up for a QB. It's not in their mindset. It's not what they're looking to do right now. I doubt it's what they're going to be looking to do come the beginning of round 2 in the NFL draft. What I could see happening today is the Pittsburgh Steelers sitting there at 83, trying to work their way up into the second round to get a running back in Trey Henderson or Quinshon Judkins or Caleb Johnson, and feeling very confident in themselves to go do that. And I'm not anti-running back in this draft at all. So if you want to go get one, awesome. But I think that depends on when the first one goes. When the Pittsburgh Steelers watch Trey Henderson go off the board or Quinshon Judkins go off the board, at that point, I believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers will begin to make phone calls to say, let's go get our guy. Let's go get a running back. We need a running back. Let's go get one and we'll feel good. Where does a quarterback go? That depends on when a running back goes. If we're going to be very honest, that depends on when a running back goes. If a running back goes and the Steelers trade up for a running back and they're sitting there at 83, they've kept their 83rd pick. They went up and they got Caleb Johnson or late in the second round. I could see Will Howard going third round, 83rd to the Pittsburgh Steelers. If not, I could see Will Howard going fourth round, 122 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I could see Kyle McCord going fifth round, whatever that pick is, 160 something to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I could see those happening. But I don't think the Pittsburgh Steelers are trading up for a quarterback. I know Ian Rappaport says that they are, but everybody, in the world said that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to get a quarterback in round 1, except for those closest to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who made it very clear that that is not their intentions in round 1. And instead, my name to watch over the next 2 days remains simple. It is Will Howard at quarterback. It is Caleb Johnson, Quinshon Judkins, and Trey Henderson at running back. And if they're going to move up, I would imagine it is for a running back. That is what I put as their next biggest priority in the NFL draft. And they would love to go get one because it's a loaded draft class and they'd feel okay about it. But obviously it depends on the trade. You're looking at guys, the New York Giants gave up everything they could to go get Jackson Dart. The Atlanta Falcons, who, let's be very honest, everybody watched that pick and said, this dude's not going to have a job by the end of the year. This GM is not going to have a job by the end of the 2025 season. Gave up the house to go get James Pierce out of Tennessee, who has a lot of questions and is there at the end. And to give up a future first-round pick, wild. For a bottom of the first-round pick, wild. But they did it. But if trades continue to be that hot and that big, I would say, the Steelers aren't going to touch it with a 10-foot pole because they're looking at it very simply going, ain't no chance the Pittsburgh Steelers and we are going to move up and sell the house to go get a running back, wide receiver, or quarterback. It's not going to happen. Now, I'll give you guys a little bit of an order of what I expect to happen today before I start diving into all your questions. I know that day after the draft, a lot to talk about, but to be honest with you, a lot of questions. And I feel like answering questions is the most important thing we could do this morning. When it comes to where the Steelers go in round 2, yesterday my prediction was Kenneth Grant and or Derrick Harmon. I was pumped to get at least half of that right. My final mock draft had Kenneth Grant. I know. I was off. But my mock draft on Sunday was Derrick Harmon. And I'm kicking myself that I bounced around and made one final move before the NFL draft. Where we sit today, my second prediction was Will Howard at 83. And I'm not changing from that. I think the Steelers are looking running back and quarterback in day 2 of the NFL draft. I would imagine Will Howard is very high on their list. I would imagine Jalen Milroe top of their list, but I guess outside of Shedeur Sanders, but Shedeur might go 33rd to the Cleveland Browns. But I've also heard that Shedeur might fall, that Shedeur might continue to go backwards because, again, Shedeur in a normal draft is not a first-round pick. He might be a second or a third. Teams are looking at it that way. Comes with a lot of noise, doesn't have the talent. That's the general consensus around much of the NFL. Now, you're looking at the Steelers. If Shedur's there, okay, no questions asked. If Shedur falls far enough where it's an easy trade to go get him, cool. Yeah, maybe. But it'd have to be so easy. It'd have to be end of the second round. All you're giving up is maybe next year's third, and you're good. You could go up there. You could trade for him. Next year's third, this year's third. All right, go get Shedur. But I'm telling you right now, if I had to guess, and we'll add a trade in there, if I had to guess with the trade, I would imagine the Pittsburgh Steelers trade into the second round and get a running back. And it's either going to be Caleb Johnson, Trey Henderson, or Quinshon Judkins. Or they sit put and they draft maybe a running back if any of those three are still there. But a second round run at running back wouldn't surprise me at all. Or they draft, I would imagine, maybe a Will Howard. That's where we stand right now. Nobody gets super excited. Obviously, if Jalen Milroe's there at 83, there's a conversation to be had. And I think the Steelers would take a shot on that guy. But I don't think that they're going to move up for Jalen Milroe. I think Shedeur Sanders would be the only name that they said, all right, let's do it. And it'd have to be like the first pick in the third round, last pick in the second. He'd have to really fall. And the Steelers would just say, all right, let's make nothing. Let's make something out of nothing. And let's figure it out. But those are my predictions for day two. Where they go from there, well, it depends on how day two shakes out. But we'll dive into that when the time comes. All right. With that said, it's time to start diving into all of your questions. Start tossing them in the chat. I'll get to them. But first, we're going to take a quick break.
Pittsburgh, this one's for you. From the voices behind all Steelers talk comes Black and Gold apparel, your go-to for bold, fan-driven merch that reps the city, the Steelers, and everything in between. Whether you bleed black and gold or just love that Pittsburgh grit, we've got something for you. It's more than a podcast. It's a community. And thanks to your support, we're proud to bring the passion from our mics to your closets. Gear up, stand out, and show the world what real fans look like. Shop now at blackandgoldapparel.myshopify.com.
Shout out to all of our members. Shout out to all of our super chatters. If you got questions, toss them in the chat. I'll get to as many of them as I can before I head out of here. For those of you who kind of want a programming update with the Pittsburgh Steelers today and how they're operating things, Derrick Harmon is set to talk to the media at 4 p.m. this afternoon. I will be there, have all the updates and information ready for you guys. Super excited to meet Derrick. I've heard great things about Derrick Harmon, who he is as a human being. And I'm telling you right now, I'm gonna drop the link in the chat right now. But Derrick Harmon, man, it shared a heartbreaking story last night about his mother being on life support after a stroke in 2022. And I mean, just his resilience, just the ability to sit there and say, you know, tonight's still awesome and I'm still super grateful. And after this, I'm going to go to the hospital and tell my mom that her son got drafted. Like, I don't know. That breaks your heart, dude. I'm getting emotional thinking about it, but it shows you how just strong this kid is. You know, he's 21 years old. This dude has already been through hell. His life's just getting started. And like I said, there were so many people last night that got to enjoy being drafted into the NFL more than Derrick Harmon did, who had a better night than Derrick Harmon. But I'm going to be honest, like, I'm grateful that the Pittsburgh Steelers got to introduce me and all of you guys to this guy because I think he's one hell of a person. And I'm pumped to get to know him more. I'm super pumped to get to know him more and to understand more about Derrick Harmon. All right. Let's get into it. If you got questions, toss them in the chat. Once again, shout out to our members. Shout out to our super chatters. We're going to start with Carson here. Love the Harmon pick. Yelling at the TV not to choose Sanders too early. Do you see Milroe going in the second? Still my ideal pick. Also, I sent an email to you last week if you ever get a chance. Definitely will continue to do those. To be honest, I got some time this afternoon, early afternoon. So I will try. My thing is I try to call people with the emails like later in the day so that people aren't at work. This is tough with the draft, obviously, but in the early afternoon, late morning, I might make a phone call or two, or I will make a phone call or two. So I apologize if I missed you. If I do miss you, I'll just leave a call back into the number, leave a voicemail, say, yo, call me at this number, and I'll make sure I do. Give me some times. Appreciate you guys. I also love the Harmon pick. I think the Harmon pick's great. I think drafting Shedeur Sanders last night, it shaped out exactly as we thought it was gonna. Exactly as we thought it was gonna. Shedeur Sanders to the Pittsburgh Steelers only made sense because no other team wanted Shedeur Sanders. Why would the Pittsburgh Steelers want Shedeur Sanders if nobody else wanted Shedeur Sanders? In the NFL, you could hope that other positions fall, but you don't hope that a quarterback falls. You don't sit there and say, man, dude, I hope that Shedeur Sanders makes his way all the way from 3-4 months ago being the number 1 pick in the draft to being the 21st pick in the draft. That seems awesome. No, this is what I was told about Shedeur, and it continues to be true throughout the entire process, but especially as of the last couple of days. Teams have come to a pretty big consensus that Shedeur Sanders comes with way too much and isn't talented enough. And I'm not saying the Pittsburgh Steelers wouldn't draft him if he's there at 83, but I am saying that the Pittsburgh Steelers are not looking to trade back in for Shedeur Sanders early in the second round. That doesn't make any sense. They could have got him at 21. They could have got a defensive tackle at 83 that they felt pretty okay about. Instead, they said, we need a defensive tackle now. We're going to stick with the defensive tackle now, and that's the direction that they're going to go in. Shedeur Sanders is a guy that maybe he works out, maybe he doesn't, but his upside isn't that big. It just isn't. As for Milroe, I think it's a late second. I don't think they would trade up for him, to be honest with you. I hate to shoot you down on that one. I hate to kill the dream, but I don't think that they would trade up for Jalen Milroe. I think that they would hope that he falls to 83. But I'll say this. 2 quarterbacks in the first round tells me that this is a Kenny Pickett draft, that Shedeur's still on there, that Tyler Shuck's still on there, that Jalen Milroe's still on there, that all these guys that, there might be 4 quarterbacks gone in the first round. There might be 5 quarterbacks gone in the first round. That didn't happen. 2 of them went. One of them was traded back into late, real late. I would imagine the second round's the same way. You get the Cleveland Browns need a quarterback. The New Orleans Saints need a quarterback. Maybe the Rams need a quarterback, but I don't know about that one. And the Pittsburgh Steelers need a quarterback. Those are 4 teams. If Shedeur goes first, Tyler Shuck goes second, you just got to hope, if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, that the Rams don't take Jalen Milroe before the 3rd round. Or before the 4th round. That's all you've got to hope for, is that the other 2 are fine. But I think Jalen Milroe at 83 is a real possibility after last night. And if the Browns pass on Shedeur, which that could happen, that could definitely happen. If the Browns, because that's the thing. That's the big thing about Shedeur Sanders, is all these teams spent so much time scouting him and then went in other directions. The New York Giants spent so much time scouting Shedeur Sanders, so much time scouting that guy. They sent 13 people to go meet with him. 13. You want to know who else sent 13 people somewhere? The Tennessee Titans to Miami's pro day. And they drafted Cam Ward. But the Giants said, we need Jackson Dart. That's the guy we're going to go with. I think Shedeur falls. It would not surprise me if he made it past Cleveland and maybe past the Saints. I don't think the Saints want him. And continue to fall. And the Pittsburgh Steelers sit there in the 3rd round and say, Jalen Milroe is still on the board. I think that's a real possibility. Chris, Will Johnson not drafted on day 1. Shocking. Will Johnson went to let me pull up the draft order. Will Johnson was selected last night. I want to find out where so I could be 100% sold with you. I know that I'm probably breaking up as I'm on a different computer screen here. That tends to happen. Will Johnson went. Oh, maybe I'm wrong. Oh, it was Michael Williams. Yeah, you're right. Will Johnson not going round 1. Super shocking, to be honest. I think the knee injury or whatever it was is bonkers to me. Bonkers. This is a guy that was a top 5 pick, I don't know, 2 months ago. And last year was a guy that might be the best player in the NFL draft. And where we sit today, he didn't go first round. I mean, that's a dude. If the Steelers, you could add that to the name too. Like, if the Steelers find themselves that at the end of the second round, Will Johnson's still sitting there, Revel's still sitting there, Ben Morrison's still sitting there, they might find themselves saying, let's go get a corner. Let's go get a corner. They want a corner. This corner class is better than it looks. Will Johnson not going round one. I thought he did, but it was Mykel Williams, and that's on me. That's on me. I was sitting right next to Nick Fairbaugh at the Rooney Sports Complex last night in the media room, and which, everybody was asking about the food. Wings were good. Caliente's pizza was pretty all right. When it comes to sitting there, Nick Fairbaugh goes, oh, Williams to, I don't remember where he went. He must have went San Francisco. And I thought it was Will Johnson. Shocking. I think that's a name. Corners are certainly on the list of possibilities for the Pittsburgh Steelers where we sit today. Chris again, Noah, I am so tired of ESPN carting out that vampire Mel Kiper every year. He has horrible takes, and like Dracula, his career just won't die. I will say that I've heard so many great stories about Mel Kiper and who he is and the hard work that he's put into this industry. I respect the hell out of him. I do. I think mock drafts are hilarious because I think that everybody spends so much time mocking drafts, and they have experts that mock drafts, and people make a whole career. Mel Kiper is the biggest one out of mocking drafts, and every year everyone is wrong. It is like if somebody got to sit around and say, my sole purpose in life, my job, I make $1 million a year, which I'm guessing, but I make $1 million a year, and what I get to do is pick the March Madness bracket. That is, I predict the March Madness bracket. Could you imagine? That's what the NFL draft is. That's what mocking drafts are. I said it last night. What was the theme of last night? Chaos. And it didn't work out. It didn't shape out the way that I thought it was going to, but there were picks left and right where you're going, what? Are you serious? What? It was a little bit of chaos. It wasn't nearly what I thought it was going to be, but trying to predict Tyler Booker to the Dallas Cowboys at 12, no chance, pal. You're not going to do that. They broke the system. Good for him. Again, I've heard great things about Mel Kiper and how hard he works. Unfortunately, predicting the NFL draft is just an impossible task, and how people have made careers out of it, I will never know. But good for them. Autumn, what if they get a running back or Will Johnson? I would be fine with either. Yeah, I think that the Steelers, Will Johnson being on the board is wild. I can't believe that one didn't click for me. I think the Steelers could move up for a running back. I think that's very likely where we sit here today. Like if you were to predict a trade for the Pittsburgh Steelers on day 2, predict it to be for a running back. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but if you're going to predict one trade in the second round, predict it to be a running back, because they love the running back class. They understand who's in this running back class and how good they are. And they would love to go get their hands on Trey Henderson or Caleb Johnson or any of those guys. And I think they got a shot to do so. I do. I think Will Johnson, Ben Morrison, Chevelle out of ECU, those guys being on the board still. Unless there's a fast and quick and early run at corner, I could see all 3 of those guys being options for the Pittsburgh Steelers to move up and get. But I could also see all 3 of those guys falling and the Steelers going, you're going to let us get Ben Morrison in the second or in the third round? Are you kidding me? That's where we're at. Is the draft, the first round of the draft shook out to where there are a lot of names in the second round that the Steelers could hope fall into the third. I think it's a bummer they don't have a second round pick. I wouldn't rule out that they're trying to get one. Running back, I think corner to a much lesser extent, but still over quarterback could be the trades. Running back would be my guess. If GP balls out, can't you transition tag him? Yes, you definitely can. The issue is not about what comes after the 2025 season for George Pickens. The issue is, will George Pickens be comfortable playing on the last year of his deal in Pittsburgh and be cordial and humble? And yeah, that's totally fine. And don't get me wrong, I'm pro player. Pay the man. Pay him. You don't get to play in the NFL forever. You don't get to coast your life out and say, I'm making millions of dollars every year for the rest of my life. No, you have busted your butt to get here. You're going to make some great money while you're here, but you're not going to do this forever. So get paid. And I think George Pickens and every other player, you run the risk of they're not open to playing on the final year of a cheap deal. That's the issue with George Pickens. It has nothing to do with next year. I think if you could get through this summer and he plays into the season, you've already won. Like, you're okay. You want to move on from George Pickens in a year, you want to transition tag him, or you want to do whatever, great. But the issue is him holding out during training camp to say, you either got to trade me or sign me, and him not being okay with playing on the last year of his deal. That's where the trade conversation comes into place. That's where the worry comes in with the Pittsburgh Steelers and everybody else. Nate Moore, this was always the plan. Khan and Weidl are copying the Eagles formula. Build the trenches, trust the process. Some crazy fans out there. Yeah, this has been the process. It's been the process. It's been what the Steelers have been trying to do. They built their offensive trenches. They put everything they had into those offensive linemen. And maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, but the foundational pieces are there. Now they're trying to do the same on defense. They went out and got Keanu Benton. They lucked themselves out of Cam Hayward still being around. Now they go out and get Derrick Harmon. I would not be surprised if next year they went in the trenches again and added another first-round pick, but this is what you do. This is what you do. Build your trenches. Trenches win football games all the time. They always win football games because Saquon Barkley is not Saquon Barkley without a phenomenal offensive line. It just isn't. And the Steelers are hoping Jaylen Warren or whoever is not Jaylen Warren without a phenomenal offensive line. They're doing the same on defense. This was the plan. It's been the plan. They've made it clear. Like, that's the thing with the Steelers and this whole situation is they made it abundantly clear that they wanted a defensive tackle from the jump. Art Rooney said it in his end of season press conference. We are looking to have a youth movement on the defensive line. Wonder what that means. And then they released Larry Ogunjobi. Wonder what that means. And then they signed everybody that they could possibly sign in every position. They said, let's go get a corner. Let's go get a backup running back. Let's get some backup offensive linemen. We'll get a third safety. All these things are great. Mason Rudolph, in case we can't get a quarterback. Never once replaced Larry Ogunjobi. Signs were on the wall. They knew they were happening. I think you win through the trenches. The Steelers are a team that is built on defense. They will always be that team. I get it that they haven't had the success that they've been looking for, but that success has come when they've done that. And right now they're at a place where they look like they're doing it. I think it helps out TJ Watt. I think it helps out Cam Hayward. I think it helps out Keanu Benton. I think it helps out everybody. I think having Derrick Harmon was a great pick. I'm all about defensive tackles in this draft, but I'm especially about early ones with serious upside. So shout out to Omar Khan and Andy Weidl. I think it's another big win. Shout out to Omar Khan for kind of hitting a place where he's getting real good at not saying anything except for, yeah, we made our pick. It was a good one. We're excited about it. Rec 7, first of all, sorry guys, I'm so dehydrated this morning. First of all, let's just take a moment and appreciate that our front office aren't complete imbeciles. 2, if any trades are to be made, to be continued. Look it. Shout out to the front office. I think it was a great pick to go defensive line and Derrick Harmon over quarterback. I remain that. That will not change for me. It isn't even close to being changed for me. When it comes to a trade in the second round, running back is the one. Let's talk teams, because I keep saying, oh, running back would be the trade. Will Johnson might be maybe a corner, like whatever. Let's talk about where. I think the Steelers could trade up to 8 in the second round with the Carolina Panthers and say they're looking to build picks. They're not looking for anything else. And that's a pretty significant jump. It's a pretty significant jump. But I still think you could get up there with this year's third, next year's third, maybe your 5th. And you're limited after that. You don't have many picks left. But if your selections are Trey Henderson, at pick 8 in the second round, or Will Howard at pick 83 in the third round, you're going Trey Henderson 10 times out of 10 times. And if you don't have to give up too much to go do it, I think the second round is much easier to trade up into. I think the second round in a bad draft is much easier to trade up into. I think the second round where the running back class is the deepest and the Carolina Panthers have a running back, easy to happen. Easy to happen. That would be a team to watch. There are a couple of. You're looking at maybe the New Orleans Saints at 9 right after them. I would imagine the Indianapolis Colts or a team that could be on the move or could be looking to move. I would imagine the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs are very comfortable making moves if need be. I would also think that, to be honest with you, if you wanted to go get your second round pick back from Seattle, you could do so. I do think that that's a possibility. I think there are a lot of teams that are looking to move that aren't totally sold on this draft class that are okay with building picks for next year. The Steelers, on the other hand, are a team that could look at it and go, let's go get our guy. Who cares? Let's go get our guy. It's not a quarterback. Let's go get our guy everywhere else and not give up too much, because that's the thing. The Steelers are very close. They're very close to a complete roster. If you could go get your guys this year, all you got to do is figure out the quarterback position next year. Chris, once again, trade Pickens to go get Luther Burden. I like it. Yeah, Luther Burden would be the top of the list right now for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I would guess. I mean, like early second round, but it depends on when he's going to go. I wouldn't be surprised if he is off the, like, who did New York? The Giants traded with, I don't even remember. The Giants traded with Houston. I could see Houston saying, let's go get Luther Burden. I could see, if he falls far enough, I could see the Rams saying, let's go get Luther Burden. George Pickens for Luther Burden, in my eyes, not a terrible pick, not a terrible move. I don't know if I'd be all about it. I'd want a little bit more. If I'm trading George Pickens, I want a second round pick and some. Give me a second round pick and a third next year. Give me a second round pick and a fourth next year that I could trade up my third and go get a running back as well with whatever other pick you just gave me. If that's okay. I think I'd trade George for a little bit more than just a straight up second round pick. I think it could happen. It could happen. But I personally think I'd want a little bit added bonus if I'm downgrading from George Pickens to Luther Burden. I don't think it's that big of a drop, but I don't think Luther Burden is a superstar like George Pickens is. What if we trade Alex Highsmith to the Texans? OBJ, for the second and third and future fourth. I don't think the Steelers have any interest in trading Alex Highsmith where we stand today. If they were to trade him, they could get a second round pick, I would imagine. They could probably get a second, a fourth. I don't know if you're getting a second, third, and a fourth. You'd probably get a decent bit, but I don't know if you're getting that much for an Alex Highsmith. I don't think the Steelers have any interest in that. They like Alex Highsmith. They like their defense. They just put it into the defense. It's the same thing as, you could go back to last year and talk about all the trades that the Pittsburgh Steelers were looking at and considering. And, the argument was, you can't give up this. You can't ruin this position or this side of the football to fix other things. And with Alex Highsmith, you just put your defense together. Like, you just finished it and said, this is a great defense. You can't remove one key piece to go get a second round pick, a running back, or, whatever. And you're not going to replace Alex Highsmith in this draft. So I don't think the Steelers would be interested. I think it could work. I think what you'd get for Alex Highsmith is a second and maybe a fourth. I don't know about a third, but a second, maybe a future fourth or a future third. But I don't think the Steelers are looking to do that. Rec 7, it's one of those many picks we have for next year because we own a ton of comp picks. Don't entertain GP, TJ, none of the important acronyms. I'm going into the rest of this draft already highly pleased. Yeah, shout out. I think that the Steelers would never in a million years trade TJ Watt. That's just not going to happen. It's not even a consideration. When it comes to, the rest of this and trading George Pickens, I think if the right trade presents itself, the Steelers could look that way. But just like I said yesterday, going into the first round, the Steelers are not going to actively call for a George Pickens trade unless they go get a wide receiver. And they didn't get a wide receiver in the first round. And I told you Emeka Egbuka was going to go early. I told you. And I thought he was an option for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If that happened, if Matthew Golden happened, if for some reason, McMillan fell and the Steelers were sitting there and said, we got a wide out, this is awesome, then they would actively pursue a George Pickens trade. But they're not going to seek one out. One will now have to come to them that they are a bit thrown away by and said, whoa, there it is. We got to make a move now. And then they'll trade George Pickens. TJ, they wouldn't entertain anything for. I firmly believe that. I to be honest, I haven't even asked that question to anybody because I don't think that question needs to be asked. The Steelers would never, ever trade TJ Watt. I mean, TJ Watt has been involved in conversations about the future this offseason that are significant. I know that. And if he's not going to be involved in those conversations if they're considering trading him. George, I think they'd have to be blown away by. TJ, they would not. I'd be okay with the Steelers going into the offseason and trying to figure things out with George, and I think that they might try to figure things out with George. Do I think it's likely to happen? No, but I think it's on their mind to leave this draft with George Pickens unless something big happens and they get a trade where they could move him and they feel satisfied about it. ND Joe, Noah, you mentioned how the Atlanta GM is done. How is no one talking about the Jacksonville GM selling the farm to move up 3 spots within the top 5? Love the Harmon pick. Love the show, brother. Appreciate you as always, my man. To be honest, I liked the Jacksonville move. I liked it. I mean, I think he gave up way too much for a non-quarterback. But I also think that Travis Hunter is the best player in this draft by a mile. I think he'd be the best player in next year's draft. I think he'd be the best player in the year after that's draft. Travis Hunter is unbelievable. And if you get a guy that I think he fits perfectly in Jacksonville, he gives Trevor Lawrence an option. He hopefully fixes a little bit of defense. He's a dude, man. He's a stud. He's a star-studded player, and I think that Jacksonville went and got a star-studded player. Do I think I would have given all that up for him? No. I would have been pretty okay without it. But I don't – look it. If Jacksonville could win enough games where they're not picking in the top 15 next year, that's a win. They're doing okay. If they're not, if that's a top 10 pick that you just got Travis Hunter for and he has 800 yards next season, yeah. That 34-year-old who looks like he's 15, that hot seat's going to get hot real fast, like real fast. But I will say that Trevor Lawrence, Liam Cohn, Brian Thomas, Travis Hunter's walking into one hell of a situation, and I think it could work out in his favor. I do. Tony, what are we going to move up with? Oh, great question. I think the Steelers would have to give up a their third round pick, and I think they'd have to give up next year's second, maybe next year's third, depending on how far they're moving up. If it's the end of the second, which is what I would predict, then if there was a trade, I'm not confident that there's going to be one. I don't even think I'm more than 50% confident that there's going to be one. But if there's a trade, if the Steelers say we got to make a move for whoever, I would imagine it's the end of the second round. They give up their third round pick 83, next year's third, and maybe like a lingering fifth or something, sixth. But I would imagine it's nothing more than that. I don't think it'd take that much to go up to the end of the second round. It gets lower and lower as you go, the compensation that's needed to move up. I would imagine your third this year, your third next year gets the job done. Maybe, just maybe, depending on how high you got to go up next year, second. I don't know if I'm giving that up. I'd be okay with 2/3. Depending on who you're getting, I would be okay with 2/3. Artisanal Bully Kennel, with how the draft has been played so far, has it affected your predictions? Great question again. I think a little bit. I do think a little bit. So my third round pick, my mock going into it, I was wrong on round 1. I went Kenneth Grant. Derrick Harmon would have been my other pick, but 0 for 1. We'll admit that. 0 for 1. Derrick Harmon going there over Kenneth Grant. I mean, defensive tackle, that doesn't change anything for me. Shedeur Sanders being into the second round. Jackson Dart going late to the Giants. I think for one, my third round pick was Will Howard. Gone. I don't think that's going to happen. I think quarterbacks are going to fall. I think Jalen Milroe, there's a possibility is there at 83. I think that Tyler Shuck might not go until late second round, maybe early third round. If you're the New Orleans Saints and you're the next team after the Cleveland Browns that needs a quarterback, okay? You're looking at it going, Pittsburgh doesn't pick until 83. I don't got to go get a quarterback in the second round. I could wait. If Tyler Shuck falls to the third, if the Rams don't get a quarterback, which is, a possibility for sure, you're looking at a team that is going to have options at 83 to go get a quarterback. I would say Jalen Milroe might be on the board. They'd draft him over Will Howard. They might wait it out until the fourth to get a quarterback. I think that's another prediction that I could see happening. They could, if I had to predict a trade, it's no longer the George Pickens trade. It's the move up to get a running back trade. I do think that's there. But right now where the board is, where things have shaken out, I'm bumping cornerback pretty high on the Steelers list. I'm bumping running back pretty high on the Steelers list, and I'm moving quarterback down. That's where I stand right now. I don't think the Steelers are gung-ho on going to get their guy because their guy isn't there. Maybe a running back is, maybe a corner is, maybe a wide receiver is, but I would put those three positions before quarterback in my mock draft if I started today. Tony, I think we should have drafted Golden and traded George Pickens. I like Matthew Golden a lot. I like Matthew Golden a ton, but I like Derrick Harmon more. I do. I think Derrick Harmon's more fine-tuned. I think he brings you more versatility. I think he's got a longer upside than Matthew Golden. I think teams love Matthew Golden. I'd be okay with the Matthew Golden pick. I think I'd be excited with the Matthew Golden pick. But at the end of the day, I think Matthew Golden's got a lot of Xavier Worthy in him, and that's awesome. But Derrick Harmon's got Cam Hayward in him, and I'm sorry, but Cam Hayward's been here for a long time. He's the only player I've ever seen define father time this long that doesn't play quarterback. That's awesome. If Derrick Harmon could be that, the Steelers just lucked out. They have a phenomenal player. Phenomenal player. I like Matthew Golden. I do. I think if you got Matthew Golden, traded George Pickens, and somehow walked away with Derrick Harmon again, okay, that's awesome. But I don't think that would have been a real possibility for the Steelers. I would have went Harmon over Golden, but I hear what you're saying there. And I'm telling you, if they landed a pick with the running back or with the wide receiver in the first round, I would imagine GP was gone by the beginning of day 2, maybe early in day 2. Chris, Noah, worst first round pick, the Bears at 10. Yeah, Loveland was a bad pick over Tyler Warren, especially with the medical concerns. I think Booker to Dallas was a bad pick. Bad pick. Was not a fan of that one at all. Those were the big ones to be. Atlanta. I mean, it's Atlanta. It's Atlanta. Atlanta trading the house to move back in a future first round pick to move back up to 27 or 26 and drafting an edge rusher with questions. What are you doing? How did you get here? Who made that decision? This is 2 bad drafts in a row for Atlanta. This is 2 bad first round picks in a row for the Atlanta Falcons. I'm not a Michael Penix guy. And even if I was, the way they went about it last year was atrocious. That GM, man, is in a bad spot. A bad spot. That's the hands down the worst pick of the first round. Booker to Dallas is up there. I think the only thing with Loveland is he is phenomenal, and I have heard that there's a lot of upside there and that there are a number of teams that had him over Tyler Warren because of that upside. I would have went Tyler Warren, but I could see where they're coming from. Booker to Dallas at 12, atrocious. Atlanta trading up with the Rams for 26, god awful. Like the worst move of the first round by far. Rec, I smell a Deontay situation. If we trade George Pickens with no successor in place, we can't do the same all over again. I'd really look at the Steelers. I don't think would trade George Pickens without a backup plan. I think they have learned that they need a backup plan in place before they move on from George Pickens. I do think that. I do think that they feel that way. If they traded George Pickens again, it would be with a, hey, we drafted a wide receiver. We've landed a wide receiver, or we're trading George for a wide receiver, something like that. Now, if it comes July and you trade George Pickens, it's not a, we traded George Pickens because we don't think he's good enough to be on our team. It's a, we traded George Pickens because our options were he was not going to play football this year, or we get rid of him. And I think that that's where they're headed. I don't think it's going to happen during the draft after last night. The possibility's still there, but I'm not as confident in it as I was the possibility last night. But at the same time, if he decides, hey, I'm not playing unless I get a big deal, can't blame him. The Steelers want to give him a big deal. I don't think that that's on the table right now. Maybe it could change, but I don't think that's on the table right now. I would imagine that they look to, in July, move him with a contingency plan in place. I don't know if they're going to get that, though. I truly don't. I think it's going to be a tough time for the Pittsburgh Steelers to replace George if they don't replace him in the draft. And it could lead to another bad situation. I don't disagree, but that might be how it's going to play out. CJ, we needed another high caliber defensive tackle. Yes, the Steelers did. I think it was a phenomenal pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I look at it and go, this dude is a stud and remains a solidified stud. I like Derrick Harmon. I'm pumped to meet him today. I'm pumped to understand him more. I'm pumped to learn more about him and his backstory and everything else and who he is and what drives him. And, like I said, dude, go read the story that Jack Markowski put out on SI yesterday about Derrick Harmon, dude, on Steelers. Phenomenal piece, phenomenal backstory. Shout out Derrick Harmon, man. That dude is awesome. I'm pumped to learn more about him. I'm a big fan of who he is. I'm a big fan of that. Again, number 1 defensive tackle in college football last season in pressures. Number 2 had 12 less pressures. 12. That's a big number, big gap. Adam, do you think they could double dip at defensive line? I do think that's a possibility. I would imagine later in the draft is more likely, 4th, 5th, 6th round. I could see it happening. My thing is that you want, the way the board is shaking out, you want a running back, you want a wide receiver. I don't know if they're going to get a wide receiver. But even wide receivers, there were only 3 that went in the first round last night. I guess 4 if you count Travis Hunter. And they probably want a corner. So do they get all those guys and another defensive tackle? I could see it late. I could see, again, 4th, 5th, 6th round, maybe 7th. That's where they go. But I would guess that the Steelers are eyeing a running back right now, that they're thinking, man, if somehow a corner finds his way to us in the 3rd round, that would be crazy. And then from there, they'll go, all right, we'll get a backup quarterback. And look, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to jump to this next question here from Nate Moore. Noah, are the Steelers doomed now with no quarterback? I don't think that the Steelers are guaranteeing themselves that they walk out of this draft class with a quarterback. I would not be stunned if they didn't get one. I wouldn't be. The way the board is shaking out, the Steelers could find themselves saying there is talent at other positions deeper in this draft that we need to go after, that we could be all about moving forward. And I wouldn't blame them if they went running back, if they went corner, if they went wide receiver, if they went another defensive line. Like, who could blame them to say, hey, don't go get Kyle McCord or Will Howard, go get Ben Morrison, go get Savion Williams, go get Trey Henderson, go get Caleb Johnson, Quinshon Judkins, Damian Martinez, like all of these guys. Go get some studs across the board later in the draft that are now somehow falling. I wouldn't be surprised. It would not shock me if the Steelers didn't get a quarterback. Now, are the Steelers doomed now that they don't have a quarterback? No. No, the plan is still Aaron Rodgers, and it remains Aaron Rodgers, and it's not going to change. I mean, the Steelers are confident that they're going to get Aaron Rodgers. They are. Do they think it's a definite? No, but they're confident, and they're going to remain confident. I'm telling you right now, my guess is Aaron Rodgers signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers the week before training camp. That is my guess, and it will remain there. And I know nobody wants to wait until July to make this happen, but I think it's gonna. I do. I truly, truly think it's gonna. I truly, truly think that is when they're going to sign him. But they are. I mean, as of yesterday, I didn't hear about a deadline. I saw Josina's report. I trust Josina. You know, she's reliable. Sometimes we hear different things. I had a conversation an hour before the NFL draft last night. I was packing up. I was standing on my front porch, walking back and forth. I think all my neighbors knew all the news about the Pittsburgh Steelers and where they were going, but just doing some last minute, talking, figuring some stuff out. And that last minute talking got me. They still feel pretty good. Aaron Rodgers is going to end up in Pittsburgh, and that has not changed. And it's not going to change. That's where they stand, and that's where they're going to stand. And doomed maybe, but I mean, Aaron's better than Kyle McCord or Will Howard. I'll give you that. Any day of the week, Aaron Rodgers is better than either of those decisions right now. All right. Excuse me. CJ, COVID years equals super deep draft. Quarterbacks will be okay. Yeah, I think that next year's quarterback class is great and very deep, and you could go out with a bang. So that's where the Steelers are. I'm telling you, that's where they're eyeing. They're eyeing next year. Like, even if they traded back up into the first round this year or into the second round this year, they wouldn't do it in a way that harms their ability to go get a quarterback next year. They understand what next year's draft class is. They think Aaron Rodgers is going to be the guy this year. If not, it could be Mason Rudolph, and they're okay with that. But they are looking at next year and saying, we got to go get our guy. Next year, we got to go get our guy. But the possibility of it being our guy and a better guy are significantly higher. And that's where they stand at quarterback. All right, y'all. With that said, I am heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to me on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Oh, I do want to reply to this one because I had it in here, and I apologize for this one. Ryan Clark's reaction to the pick. Hilarious. Shout out Cody Silva for bringing that one up. Did you see Ryan Clark's reaction to the pick? Shaking my head. Oh yeah, bro. We're gonna yeah. I love Ryan Clark, dude. He's hilarious. He's a great dude. He's very friendly. Every time I've ever talked to him, he's been super awesome. Has always had great things to say to me, and I've had great things to say back to him. Hilarious that a defender is saying that. But I'll tell you this, that is not the consensus in Pittsburgh alum. I'll tell you that right now. They are thrilled, super thrilled for Derrick Harmon to be here. Ryan wanted Shador, but there are a lot of former Steelers that are pumped Derrick Harmon is in Pittsburgh, and with good reason. All right. Now with that one, I'm heading out of here, guys. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to me on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check me out anywhere you get your podcasts. I'm asking deeply and continuously. Go hit those audio downloads on Apple. I'm trying to be that top 10 at the end of the year. It is my goal for 2025. I don't know if I'm going to hit it, but I'm going to need your guys' help if we could hit it. Also, find all my work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. I'll be at UPMC Rooney Sports Complex this afternoon. We'll have all of the updates from the Derrick Harmon press conference and where the Steelers go from there. And then obviously I will be back at the complex tonight to dive into round 2, round 3 of the Pittsburgh Steelers NFL draft. And we'll be back tomorrow morning to recap everything that is happening. With that said, it's a little rainy, but go enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.